On the morning of May 31st, 1889, engineers had known for 9 years that the dam above Johnstown was unsafe. Reports had been filed. Letters had been sent. Repairs had been requested and refused. Nothing had been done. And on that morning, a young engineer named John Parke stood at the top of the South Fork Dam in western Pennsylvania and watched the water rising. He had been hired by the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club to supervise the installation of a sanitary sewer system at their private mountain resort. He was 22 years old. He was not a licensed engineer. He had studied civil engineering for 3 years without completing a degree. He was the most qualified person at the dam that morning. By 11 a.m., the lake behind the dam had risen to within 2 feet of the crest. Parke sent riders to warn the towns below. He organized a crew to try to cut an emergency spillway. The ground was too hard. The tools were insufficient. The work had started too late. At approximately 3 p.m., the South Fork Dam failed. 20 million tons of water dropped more than 400 feet in elevation as it moved into the Little Conemaugh Valley. For a short time, the flood's discharge rivaled the flow of the Mississippi River. By the time it reached Johnstown, a city of 30,000 people, 14 miles downstream, it was carrying houses, railroad cars, trees, and the remains of every community it had passed through. 2,209 people died. 777 of them were never identified. Their remains were buried in a mass grave at Grandview Cemetery. The archive of what happened before that morning, the warnings, the reports, the decisions, is one of the most thoroughly documented cases of known risk being systematically ignored in American history. The South Fork Dam was not a new structure in 1889. It had been built in the 1850s as part of Pennsylvania's canal system, designed to supply water to a canal terminal in Johnstown. It was an earthen dam, a massive wall of packed soil and rock, 69 feet high and 931 feet long, holding back a reservoir 450 feet above the city. When railroads made the canal obsolete, the dam was abandoned. It partially failed in 1862, draining the reservoir. No one was killed, no one repaired it. For nearly 2 decades, the remnants sat exposed. In the late 1870s, a group of Pittsburgh industrialists purchased the site. Their membership roster included Andrew Carnegie, Andrew Mellon, Henry Clay Frick, and approximately 50 other steel, coal, and railroad executives. They rebuilt the dam to create a private fishing lake, Lake Conemaugh, at their exclusive mountain retreat, the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. The rebuild was documented at the time as shoddy. One civil engineer who visited the site in 1,880 noted leaks near the old culvert before the breach had even been filled halfway. The contractor had brushed off his concerns. More significant were the specific modifications the club made to the original design. The discharge pipes at the base of the dam, the pipes that allowed engineers to lower the water level in an emergency, were removed and never replaced. The crest of the dam was lowered by as much as 3 feet to allow a road to cross it. The spillway was partially blocked with iron fish screens to prevent the club's expensive stocked fish from escaping downstream. A hydraulic analysis published in 2016 confirmed what engineers had suspected for decades. These modifications cut the dam's safe discharge capacity in half. The dam that stood above Johnstown in 1889 could handle approximately half the water flow that the original design had been built to manage. The warnings are in the archive. In 1880, Daniel Morrell, head of the Cambria Iron Company in Johnstown, whose facilities represented approximately $1.45 billion in today's dollars, commissioned a civil engineer named John Fulton to inspect the dam. Fulton's report was explicit. He identified the missing discharge pipes. He noted the sag in the dam's crest. he recommended specific repairs. Morrell sent the report to the club's president, Benjamin Ruff, with a letter requesting that the repairs be made. Ruff's response, which also survives in the archive, dismissed the concerns. He assured Morrell that the dam was safe and that no repairs were necessary. Morrell did not pursue the matter further. He had no legal mechanism to compel the club to act. The dam was private property. Its owners were among the most powerful men in America. For the next 9 years, Johnstown residents and engineers periodically raised concerns about the dam. After each major storm, there was a period of alarm, and then the water would recede and the alarm would subside. By the late 1880s, the prospect of the dam failing had become, in the words of one eyewitness, almost a running joke. "Sometime that dam will give way," residents would say, "but it won't ever happen to us." After the flood, survivors brought lawsuits against the club and its members. Every lawsuit failed. The club had almost no assets. Its physical facilities had been destroyed. Legal action against individual members was nearly impossible under the law of the time, because it required proving personal negligence rather than corporate liability. The members were represented by the best lawyers money could buy. The American Society of Civil Engineers appointed a committee to investigate the dam failure. Its report, published in 1891, concluded that the club's modifications had not caused the disaster, that the dam would have failed even without the changes. Engineers and historians have disputed that conclusion for over a century. A 2025 presentation to the Association of State Dam Safety Officials described the ASCE report as a likely whitewash, delayed in release, and showing clear signs of tampering. The committee members had professional and social connections to the club's membership. No member of the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club was ever held legally responsible for 2,209 deaths. Andrew Carnegie donated money to rebuild Johnstown's library. The library building today houses the Johnstown Flood Museum. The Johnstown flood did not change American law immediately. It took decades. The legal concept of strict liability, the idea that causing harm through negligence can result in liability even without proof of intent, developed in part because of the series of legal defeats that Johnstown survivors suffered. What the courts would not do in 1889, later tort law, eventually made possible for future victims of similar failures. The archive of the 1889 flood is among the most complete records of a preventable disaster in American history. The engineering reports survive. The correspondence between Morrell and Ruff survives. The warnings survive. The decisions not to act survive. What the archive documents is not a mystery or an accident. It is a system operating exactly as it was designed to operate, where the people who controlled the infrastructure had no legal obligation to protect the people who lived below it, and where the mechanisms that might have forced accountability were controlled by the same class of men who had built the dam. The system didn't fail at Johnstown. It worked perfectly. "Our misery is the work of man," the Johnstown Daily Tribune wrote 5 days after the flood. The archive agrees. This channel follows what the archive actually shows. The video before this one was about the secret subway built under New York in 1869 and buried for 42 years. The video before that was about American cities that were built to be capitals and then abandoned. If this is the kind of content you want more of, the subscribe button is right there. And it actually helps the algorithm decide whether to show this to more people who need to hear it. What's the infrastructure failure near you that the archive shows was preventable and that no one was held responsible for? Drop it in the comments.